Welcome back to the SPL Smite fans. Finch here, and as usual, we have partnered up with Maxonomic to bring you these sick chairs like the one that I'm sitting in. I know you all can't see it super clearly, but it's as comfortable as we always make it sound like. And if you are in the market, if you are on the hunt for a new chair, then this is a great one to pick up. It comes branded with all your favorite Smite stuff, all the rolls going alongside the back of it, as you can see there, so you can show off one of your favorite games that you have always been a part of here with us. You also get the exclusive in-game award skin when you pick this one up as well. So hey, can't think of any good reason why you wouldn't do it if you are in the market for a brand new chair. Now, I am on the desk here with Gore the same way that I was on the cast with Gore, so you know it's going to be an easy day for me when I get to ride along in the Gore backpack. And Gore, this next set that we're going up against here, we're about to watch here, is SSG against Obey. On paper, I think a bit of a mismatch, but one where I think Obey has a chance to certainly surprise us here and show us what they've been working on lately.
Yeah, if anything, this is a heat check for Obey more than anything, I think, on the SSG side of things, right? Maybe a little bit of a heat check for SSG, right? Are you still as dominant as you've been performing, consistently overall? 13-3, they win this one, at least for the day. They can keep it tied up there with Ghost Gaming, although with Ghost specifically getting that, I want to say extra win, or maybe it should be worded that Spacestation getting that extra loss against a team other than Ghost now has made things a little murky up at the top for them. This is really one that, if you want to continue having that fight for first, you have to take it pretty fast.
I think this is one where you'd be expected to win if you're SSG, but Obey have caused some problems for some top teams in the past. They do often play through Sino in the jungle, but this is a multifaceted team that will play things you do not expect. When Inbound is on form, that is trouble for you out of the support role as well, because he can cause all kinds of problems for you. This is a team that when they're clicking, they can be tough to beat.
Yeah, I think Ducky as well has had a very prominent Phase 2 here, being able to pull out some gods. I think the Wukong came out a little bit before we started seeing some of the others, and unfortunately it just hasn't come to fruition for him, right? Like, I mean, you look at all 5 of these guys, they've all played very well. Granted, sometimes it's hit or miss. It's really just trying to get their performances to align, I think, more than anything that has been troublesome. And, Finch, we talk a lot about win streaks. You look at Ghost, 7-game win streak. You look at PK, they were on a 5-set win streak after they took that break, or I guess before they took that break. Obey is kind of on the opposite side, though. They're trying to break a loss streak. Right now they've had 5 sets in a row that have just not gone their way. The last time they won was way back in Week 8 up against Radiance, nonetheless. So, I mean, they got a win against a very strong team, maybe not at their strongest in their form, but they've showcased that they can do it and can play upset. It's, again, just doing it more consistently than what they've been able to.
Yeah, I think that was the start of the descent for Radiance when Obey came in and proved, hey, y'all can't just come back into the SPL like that. You got to make sure you're ready, because we'll beat you if you're not. And I think that proves that Obey are ready to take it even to the top teams if they come in a little bit less than 100%. And so I think that means SSG have got to be 100%, right? I mean, we talked about them earlier today on the waiting room, how they pose such a problem for you in the picks and bans that you never know what it is you have to do to stop this team. Gore, I mean, how can you stop SSG if you're not named Ghost? I don't think anyone else has consistently done it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky you're the Knights and you're able to. I mean, they were on a hot streak. They show up. It still takes them 3 games to be able to get a win against SSG, but they're the only ones who have been able to do it. And honestly, you go back and watch it, and it's just, you have to play at a different level. You have to play a different game of Smite than you play against literally anybody else in the league, Ghost included. And we had talked about this, you had highlighted on the waiting room, but what other team has the most unique bans than SSG? I mean, everybody else, you're banning mostly meta, anything. But when it comes down to SSG, you're banning out Dardes. Oh, well, you didn't ban out Nika? Great, he's on Amaterasu. Good luck dealing with that. Oh, Cherio can play quite literally any god that he wants to, even Athena in the jungle if he so chooses. Good luck dealing with him. I just think that this team is so versatile, so consistent, so difficult to overcome that I'm even more impressed with Ghost and PK for being the only 2 teams who have done it, because it sounds impossible.
It does seem like a daunting task, but those teams have risen to the challenge. So can Obey do the same thing? Let's get into the picks and bans, that we can get our first glimpses at whether or not they're capable of finding a way to get that win done. Now, I brought this up on the waiting room earlier. SSG is not a team that gets a lot of first bloods when I was looking at some of their stat score. And what that means to me is that this is a team that doesn't care how the early game goes. When they come around to the mid to late game, they trust in their ability to start turning the game around if you got any sort of lead on them anyway, which you're lucky to be able to do. They know they can overcome it. This is a team that more time than not hits the gas in that mid game, and you never get control back.
And there's a lot of, I think what we always worded it as is kind of retaliation, right? Like, they don't necessarily care with whether or not they even engage on the fight. Half the time, I don't even think they want to. They just reluctantly go into it like, okay, yeah, we'll fight you if we have to, and they walk away winning it every single time, so it's something that works out for them. I mean, they even have said it in interviews. You know, Nika, we tout him because of his Amaterasu, but they've straight up said he doesn't like playing her anymore. He plays her all the time. He would wish people would ban it so he could play it, but if they're leaving it open, then it's something he'll absolutely go to. I think Obey are doing a good job so far, though. Aphrodite, the Hera, have been very, very dominant for SSG, and like you said, maybe neither of those gods scream something like early aggression, but it's because they don't play for that. They are, as you had highlighted, playing for the mid game, the late game, and SSG, you give them either of those gods and it might as well be lights out.
It feels that way, doesn't it? Dardes at times can just end the game before you really even had a chance to get involved. I am a little, the tiniest bit surprised that it's SSG that banned away Persephone when they're in that first pick spot, instead of maybe trying to force Obey to ban that with their third ban, but it's absolutely not a big deal at all, right? They can all, I mean, there's still plenty of strong stuff for them to come back and grab. Neither Rom nor Cupid were banned here at this point. The Emoja did get banned there at that tail end, but Amaterasu is still open for Nika to take, and why did I pretend anything else be grabbed in this spot when they've got 15 wins on this pick? Of course they'll take it. So, and now Obey get their pick. I think they do prefer the Cupid between the Cupid and the Rom, so they might grab that here.
I mean, that is, yeah, about as much as you could ask for him, right? Amaterasu's open, cool, we'll take it. I feel like the Persephone Yamoja are banned just because they don't want to have to juggle which one of the three they want to pick up first, right? Especially if Obey picked up the other two. Although, I will say, there's that line, you know, we were talking about it earlier and hinted about it, but we haven't seen Obey with a great Yamoja. I feel like that's a ban that you don't have to worry too much about. The times they picked it up, I believe they lost with it straight up for Obey, so you could actually probably play around with that and end up with an Amaterasu and a Yamoja if you're really lucky, and that really does, I think, maybe fall into more of what Raffer wants to play. Where are you going to throw him to? Because he hasn't necessarily been the most prolific Yamoja, mainly because we don't get to see him on it that often, so I don't have a lot of at least, you know, mental immediate recaps of seeing Raffer run this. Meanwhile, give him something like Ganesha, you were going back to talking about that early game pressure. Ganesh loves not having any of it. He doesn't care about the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game. He cares about that late game impact. And again, in another, we did a Grandmaster's class, Raffer just straight up said, look, you don't care about your lane phase. You don't really care about anything else. Like, yeah, you can set things up. Maybe you get a kill, but like Ganesh does not bring the pressure for the lane. Ganesh brings in so much utility, specifically with the ult, but he's got a really obnoxious silence as well. I really like this draft because it feels like SSG.
It does, doesn't it? This Morrigan for Dardes in mid is absolutely frightening, and they have Ganesh and Ama, which are signature picks for their two frontline players in Nika and Raffer. So this is already a bit scary for Obey, but I like the way that this has gone for them. I mentioned that they like the Cupid, but they instead go with a Rom here this time for the lane pressure, and obviously tremendous late-game teamfight presence, but this Sobek for inbound is where I want to spend my attention. I mean, you mentioned that they banned the Emoja away, but this Sobek, to me, is much more of an inbound pick, right? That or the Kuzin bow, and now he gets to take what is probably his primary pick in this role. He loves to get to play this Sobek.
And I actually think that's where this Ganesh comes in, because Sobek, I mean, you go in, you get a pluck, it's already going to be devastating. But before it connects, if a silence comes out, now you're just out of position. You know, you come through, maybe you successfully get the pluck, but then you go in and, you know, for either a sickling strike or you go for the tailspin and to get a knock-up, Ganesh just stops you and now you're dead in the water back there. I think there's a lot of control that comes over there, and it feels like it's a way to handle the aggression Obey are maybe looking to bring into that duo lane with the Sobek. Especially with the Rom early on, you can imagine the pressure is definitely going to be in favor of Obey, so it feels like this Ganesh is more just damage control to try and deal with what is going to be an obnoxiously strong early duo lane from Obey.
Ooh, a double Hunter composition coming out from Obey. They do like to run the Fafnir, but they already have the Sobek, so no way that's coming through. It's just double Hunter doing it the old school way. I do want to highlight these bans really quick. SSG do 2 solo lane bans to highlight Ducky by getting rid of the Wukong and the Cthulhu. Meanwhile, Obey turned their attention towards Cherio, I'm thinking, with the Habwa and the Robin bans. They're trying to limit that jungle pool for SSG. And I do wonder where Ducky's going to go over in that solo lane with Ama gone, with Wukong and Cthulhu gone. I imagine we'll be seeing him on the King Arthur at the end of all this, which is certainly still something Ducky can be impactful on.
Yeah, the one thing is Ducky brings, I think, that no other solo laner brings as much, But he's been very flexible. Granted, they haven't got a lot of wins with him, but we've seen him play Bologna, Cucullin. We see him flex onto the King Arthur that you had highlighted. He's played the Cerberus. He's played Achilles over there,
Whoa.
I believe. Like, he is more than willing to flex around to whatever they need. The thing that's kind of catching me off guard, I guess, is the Cthulhu. They pick it up decently often there, 5 times total this phase for Obey, but I don't know if that's really one of those picks that, at least to me, screams Ducky as much as some of the others.
Well, the Athena pick comes in, and I wonder now if this Sobek is flexing over to solo instead here, Gore. Maybe it's Athena support. I mean, you certainly can play Athena solo. I'm not saying that you can't, but
yeah.
I just don't know if that's necessarily where you get your most value out of her. But she could always Defender of Olympus out of the solo lane. Well, where, I guess, looking at these drafts, would you rather see this Athena end up?
As weird as it is, and I don't expect to see her over there with an on her, but I think Athena plus on her or Athena plus Rom is going to be very controlling, and it does kind of shake things up. Again, I mentioned the Ganesh having a pretty decent matchup against the Sobek, but his matchup against Athena isn't going to be as dominating. A lot of her abilities, I mean, whenever you get a taunt out, whether you're in position or out of position, it's still a taunt. It's still one of the best things in my eyes in the game. I think she's going to be able to go over there to the duo lane. More than likely, I think it would fit their playstyle, and I like the pickup for him. Sobek fits well into the solo lane as well. Against Amaterasu, you're not looking to win the lane, you're just looking to not lose it. I think this is a really good kind of change from Obey, more or less to just stifle what SSG have done, slow the game down, which might not end up helping them in the late game, but at least keep things a little more in their favor. But unfortunately, it's still SSG. The longer it goes, the more you have to favor them.
I agree, man. This SSG team in the mid to late game just get better and better. But I wonder if this was the plan from Obey with this Sobek from the beginning to see if they could bait some more solo lane bans out and maybe make things a little bit easier in that middle lane there for Wolfie, which I imagine he'll be taking this on her there. So double Hunter as the backline damage. They'll be trying to hit these targets that the Athena has taunted and that the Sobek has plucked. Ideally, the target should be getting served up for this backline for Obey as long as things all go according to plan. We'll see how this all ends up getting used, though, Goremizer. Game number 1 about to kick off.
Thank you, Finch and Gore, Aggro and Miff, bringing you game number 1 between Space Station Gaming and Obey. As Miff, we don't see a whole lot of Athena these days. She's getting a buff. I don't know how big it'll be, adding a cleave to her auto attack chain, but a buff nonetheless. But we see her here for Ducky in the solo lane for Obey.
It feels like Ducky's willing to cede the solo lane completely. He saw Nika lining up on that Amaterasu and says, all right, Word, I'm going to lose this lane, so let's use me somewhere else. The Defender of Olympus likely going to be used to gank out the duo lane the second we take over to level 5 or even help out in mid. But, Aggro, we've got the additional benefit of having 2 analysts here on this cast, so I get to ask you a question for once. How do you feel about this double Hunter draft into a Morrigan? I feel like you need a little bit more AoE to deal with it.
It's a bit annoying, I think, to not have the AoE to deal with the Morrigan, but you've got a lot of point-and-click, you're dead damage coming out of this draft. I mean, you've got the Rom snipes, you've got the on-her ult in combination with an Athena taunt, a Nem ult. I mean, there are a lot of things that I think that Dardez can really struggle against in this match, should he fall a little bit behind. Question is, will he fall behind on this Morrigan? It feels like that's one of the main draws to this god, is that her early clear is so good, and as soon as she hits level 5, her fight potential is good too.
Yeah, as good as the best player on the map, transforming into whoever he needs to be. Likely going to be that Amaterasu early on. Dazzling offensive is so hard to deal with. My concern for the late game teamfight is, once she's got that one-shot potential, sure, if you get taunted or something along those lines, or Sino sees you first and you eat the Retribution ultimate, you can shut down Dardez. But if he's stealthing around the side and he finds Wolfie or Wowie, 2 very easy to lock down targets with the Morrigan, it's going to be very hard for them to get out of any of those situations the second she finds the stun and the Dark Omen, maybe get an auto with Polynomicon, immediately transform to Ama.
Early rotation in from inbound, and where did Cherry just go? He just broke 3 sets of ankles in the mid lane. Little whoop over to the left with that third ability, and out goes Cherry. Almost first blood for Obey Alliance, but not close enough. Forces Cherio back to base, but first blood bounty still available.
but it does buy a little bit of space for Sino to make his way into a back camp invade and rotate over into the soul lane, potentially finding a pickup on Amaterasu, who, a little bit privy to it, is able to back out and find her way safely into the tower. I think that Obey are doing a good job so far, seeing that these early rotations coming through, they know that they're looking to exploit the early game and try and win out before Dardez comes online, before Cherio can get these huge Typhoon ultimates. And I like this early pathing from Inbound, just trying to get involved wherever he can, because he's got a pretty bad matchup into the Jing Wei. If he plucks her, she'll just dash on out of it. Not a lot of kill potential.
Pretty difficult to punish her even pre-5, so I agree. Heading mid seems like a much better use of Inbound's time in this game. I think the big key for me in this one, Miff, is how well Wolfie is going to be able to execute against Dardez on Dardez's signature pick. Last year, Dardez single-handedly brought on her into the meta in mid and made it look unbeatable. Now, he's not playing it as much these days, though I suppose that we could probably see that coming from him soon based on the recent on-her buffs. Does Wolfie strike you as the type of player to really excel at this pick, though? Because when I think of what Wolfie wants to do, it's often team fight centric gods that he usually likes to build a little bit of defense on. That's not really what On Her is going to bring to the table.
Yeah, when I think of On Her mid, I'm thinking early aggression, take fights to your enemy while you're hitting harder than they are, and that's not something that strikes me as Wolfie's playstyle. It's more so along the lines of what someone like Captain Twig is looking to do. But already we're seeing that the willingness to jump in is there. Maybe he's been practicing this pick a lot, but jumping into a tower line at level 2 takes a little bit of cojones, if you will, and Wolfie absolutely did it there. So I think that he can look for it, but he's already missing his opportunity to shut down this Morgan. Dardez pulls one level ahead already, and a lot of that kill potential is lost the second he gets that ultimate online transform into Sobek if you have to, and just use lurking in the water to escape out of any situation. I think if Dardez chooses to, he could just farm safely for the rest of the game, and that's something that SSG has shown a propensity for wanting to do.
Wouldn't surprise me either to see Dardez even transform into the On Her now that he's level 5 and get use of that Desert Fury ultimate. He's looked so good on that pick in the past. Really would not surprise me. We've seen him transform into Hera when the enemy team is taking it away from him. You cannot keep this guy off the picks he wants to play, because if you pick them, he'll just take Morrigan and he'll get to play them either way. It's as if it wasn't hard enough to play against this SSG team. Something that Finch said on the SPL waiting room, as I'm assuming everyone in chat watched, it's live every Friday right before the SPL starts, is that SSG is actually very, very low on First Bloods. They do not get a lot of First Bloods in their games, but obviously it hasn't hurt them too much. They are number 2 by far above everybody else besides Ghost in the SPL right now. So this pace doesn't really surprise me. This feels like the type of game SSG likes to play.
Yeah, I think the lack of First Bloods for SSG can almost be directly tied to Raffer. He doesn't play those traditional aggressive supports that we're used to seeing. Instead, he's more Sobek, Ganesh, Khepri, occasionally the Geb. It's a very defensive play style. I think that SSG is one of the few hangovers from a bygone era where we had that SPL split between North America and Europe. SSG certainly still playing that European style, very willing to wait it out, play passively, potentially the best counterpunchers in the league. And I think that they play to their strengths incredibly well. They play whatever draft they have really well on the day of. I like what we're seeing from them so far as well. Obey trying very hard to set the pace. And again, SSG very happy to sit back and farm.
Inbound's going to pay Vote a visit, but don't think this is going to cause the Hunter too much concern, though. Wow, he's actually pumping pretty solid damage. In fact, Vote's going to have to commit. He goes in with that airstrike as Cherio has joined him, but the snipes won't land. Inbound still claims First Blood with that lurking in the waters. Cherio looking to get some revenge onto Wowie. He's going to get it with help from Dardez, but a great pluck from Inbound secures the other kill. Dardez, what do you know, transforms into the On Her, but not enough accuracy with that Desert Fury. Dardez will fall 3-1 Obey early on.
I love the call from Dardez to transform into the On Her. It's the best way to find that kill without having to commit yourself under the tower. Had he decided to be the Nika Amaterasu, he would have to commit himself, and he decided to turn into Cherio. He might have actually had a little bit of a better shot with a Typhoon, maybe worried about the damage output, but a fantastic counter rotation from Obey. Heads up play from Inbound, who's playing incredibly well to find those plucks in the tower as well. Just kind of routed SSG. They get a little bit overzealous in the early game, going for that dive, and get absolutely punished for it. But even then, first blood going the way of Obey, 2 more kills going the way of Obey as well. It's only about 1,000 gold right now separating these two teams. It seems like SSG might just be farming the map a little bit better.
And the rotation from Ducky using his ultimate costs him nearly nothing. He teleports back to the right-hand side. Nika wasn't able to get blue buff. That hadn't spawned. Nika didn't even get Totem of Coup while Ducky was in the duo lane. So no pressure lost by this Athena over here in solo in order to get himself an assist and make sure that fight goes Obey's way. Great start for the Chaos side. 1-0-1 now for Wolfie in the mid lane, getting an early lead on this on her could be critical to making sure that Obey can keep this snowball going.
But take a peek at Nika's build, already making an adjustment early on to deal with this Athena, who has to largely use the dash to clear out waves. Now immediately going to the Frostbound is Amaterasu. If you dash the wave, all of a sudden you're probably going to be trading out 20 to 30% of your HP bar every single time. Athena likely not too worried about it. Should be able to go back to base or ult into lane whenever she needs to, but she's got to think a little bit longer on whether or not she wants to commit her body to deal with these waves, especially contending with the sustain that Amaterasu brings for herself.
Not going to be easy, and I imagine Ducky now will start holding the dash, because if you don't, you're going to take a lot of your HP, as you highlighted. Inbound on the receiving end of some poke here in mid, but that's trying to buy space. Gold Fury getting low. Desert's Fury already used it. Obey will secure it. Ducky here just to make sure that it goes Obey's way. No problem for Obey Alliance. It costs them 4 ultimates in order to get that Gold Fury, but objective goes their way.
Goes their way, and it goes it cleanly as well. Now it's up to SSG to identify where they can get aggressive on the map. Obey do commit a lot of their utility towards taking that, so now they're going to be a little bit weaker in the fight. And it seems like SSG absolutely know it, a grouping around the speed buff, just waiting for an opportunity.
Taking the fight to the global ultimate, but Cherio's taunted in, and he's already nearly dead. Blink forward, sets him up, and Ducky gonna cut him down, set up by the front line of Obey Alliance, but now inbound on the receiving end. Dardez is transformed into Sino. It is going to cut down at least one, uses the mobility to get out, and here comes Vote all the way over from the duo lane. It's going to make this fight even easier for SSG. Sino forced to blink out 1 for 1. Seems to be just about the end of... Excuse me, what just happened to Wolfie? Vote dives as tier 1, waltzes out casually, and got to amend that statement. 2 for 1 for SSG. Plus the speed buff.
Speed buff on the Elephant. Raffer is going to be the one picking that one up. You can't have Wowie getting out-rotated to fights like that. Essentially, Vote's allowed to 1v1 Wolfie under his own tower, while Wowie's still trying to lead the left lane. You need that global ultimate from Rom to finish off some of these kills, stop the aggression from coming through, or at least match the rotation from the Jingwei. Unfortunately, this time around, it's Vote who gets there first to his own enemy side of the jungle. Obey is going to need a quicker uptake there. They started off that fight incredibly well, with Inbound finding the Blink Pluck to set up for the first pick. After that, though, it all fell apart.
Not ideal for Obey. I mean, Wowie somehow is still behind in Devo glove stacks. Maybe he rushed Boots and got Devo second, but that's a big reason why that goes their way. Here's a replay of what happened to Wolfie in mid. Vote just walked him down. Yeah, dashed in. No impale available for Wolfie, and easy as you like. Vote walks out of the tier 1 tower, a kill richer.
Whew. Sino finding out pretty quickly what this Morrigan's bringing to the table. Already able to take about 50% of his health bar, and that's only with about 2 items available to him already. No penetration online just yet. Seems like it is going to be potentially the Spear of Magus up next for Dardez, which should help out a lot with that one-shot potential. And already, SSG, despite losing out on an objective, despite having the numbers disadvantage going into the enemy side of the jungle, is able to come out with the win. But Obey have created a little bit of ground being able to take away that goal. It's still 1,600 separating these two squads 11 minutes into the game. They need to keep up this aggression, though. I like the pace that they're setting, because as far as I'm concerned, if SSG make it to 25, 30 minutes with their draft, they should be able to win pretty cleanly because Obey's draft is so single target centric. They're not going to be able to match some of the damage output that Space Station's bringing, who, fair enough, isn't really AoE centric, but with Morgan able to transform into Ganesh and drop a second Dharmic Pillars as a huge no-play zone, or even into Nika for the dazzling offensive and that AoE damage, should be able to bring just a little bit more than Obey come late.
Dardes might be doing some sort of YouTube challenge so far this game. The fact that he's transformed into a different character every time with this changeling is not typical, I would say, for Morrigan games. Most of the time, you find one transformation you like, and you stick to it. Has not been the case so far for him. He's transformed into the Anhur and into the Nemesis. We'll see if he does want to use Raffer's Dharmic Pillars at some point in this fight, as Obey has claimed themselves a Pyromancer. Frenzy from Ducky used as a catalyst for that option, and that means it's gonna maybe a little light on Shells. Shell pretty decent against what SSG has in this game, but maybe not a necessity. The Frenzy pickup for Ducky is going to help Obey do objectives even faster, and they already did them pretty quickly with their double ADC.
But if Dardes does decide to go for the Polynomicon one-shot Morrigan build, they would have been very happy to have some additional shells, able to get them out of some of those sticky situations. That Frenzy is helping out. Makes me feel like Ducky's almost playing as a secondary support role, not even really going a bruiser path with his build, instead immediately going to the Breastplate of Valor and then a Stone of Gaia on the tail end, going to be largely committing himself to initiating the fights, which should allow Inbound to play a little bit further back in the engagements to play Peel for his double hunters, which is an interesting strategy. How well it pans out, we'll have to see as those team fights roll around, probably around this Oni Fury as it respawns in the next 10 seconds. Obey already posturing on this side of the map.
Do you think it's worth noting that when Ducky and Obey have looked their best, it's usually when Ducky is allowed to be an initiator? Think when he picks Thor, Athena can often do that same thing. Here he comes, down onto the Oni Fury, but Space Station are the ones who are going to rip it away from them. Raffer, in trouble on the front side. He will go down as Dardes looking to put out as much damage as he can, using Nika's kit to do so, but Wowie, not deterred, gets himself a double. The real Nika now showing up. Dazzling offensive, not so dazzling, but it doesn't matter. He finds number 4 for SSG, but the rest of SSG's backline is not looking so good. Vote already down. Cherio likely to be next, and it's going to be a lone Amaterasu if Obey can help it. As the only ones left, don't let it happen. Okay, I thought Sino might go down. Nika will take down Inbound as a bloodbath happens around the Oni Fury. Obey thought they were going to come out ahead. It was SSG that stole it away.
SSG steal it away and come out pretty even inside that team fight. Nika got huge value out of this Frostbound Hammer and was allowed to free cast essentially, despite going a very squishy build. It's going to be a Berserker Shield as well for the Amaterasu, only really HP, keeping her alive in these team fights, but rotates in a little bit late, so the majority of the utility was down for Obey, which allows Nika to just free cast the entire time. Raffer's fantastic positioning around the objective, not only dropping Dharmic Pillars in the entirety of Obey's backline, but also onto the objective itself to steal it away. SSG put up a good fight around it, and now they've closed that gap up just a little bit more. But Obey has been setting the pace every single time. They're choosing where the fights are happening, be it around Gold Fury or Pyromancer, and they've still got a bit of ground that SSG need to cover. Still a slight lead in favor of Obey 15 minutes in.
In a pretty decent spot, and this is where you want to be with double hunter compositions. You want to be in a position where you could be the first ones to objectives, setting up and taking those fights. As Nika's taunted, but Sino doesn't want any of that action with Cherio close behind. Check out this Executioner pickup here for Sino, an item that really fell off the face of the planet after the mid-season changes to Hunters, but I actually love it here for Sino. Remember that unlike things like Flat Pen or Percent Pen, Executioner is armor reduction, which means that it's not just you who gets the benefit. Anyone who Sino auto attacks will also have reduced armor for his double hunters to follow up off of. I think it's very smart in this slot.
I agree, and also pair that with the fact that Nemesis strips away defense already on her own within the kit. Seems to be the strategy for Obey. Whoever Ducky taunts immediately gets slapped up by Sino and his ultimate, setting up for Wolfie and Wowie to act as a just sharpened chainsaw tearing through the opposition, but it's an easier said than done strategy. It's not so often that you can line it up that easily. It's going to be very execution focused once we get into these 5-on-5 engagements.
Execution focus for the executioner. I like it. Vote, not so much. He doesn't like it quite as much as I do. Sino has found his third in a row. But here comes Dardez, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Wow, he's already taking care of Cherio in the jungle, and Sino is not deterred. Double kill for the jungler in between the Tier 1 and Tier 2 towers, as Raffer is in no man's land in the mid lane. Obey find 3 with ease on the back of Sino's 4-0-4 Nemesis.
And now Pyromancer respawning as well. Obey's going to have a pretty large opportunity here. And this late in the game, they might be able to go for the Fire Giant itself. 5-man grouping on the right side, 10 seconds left on the nearest respawn. Vote being Jingwei should be able to get in there pretty quickly. And it is going to be the Fire Giant pool. Nika's behind, he knows what's happening.
Does have that ultimate available. Thorns up and ready to go as well. Ducky finds him, he's going to taunt him in. Fire Giant getting low, and Obey are able to secure the objective. They're going to get Nika on the back end as well. Obey Alliance, it's all coming up for them here in game number 1. Doubling up Spacestation in kills, and they might be able to extend that lead a little bit more on Raffer as well. Easy for Obey Alliance so far in this one. They're up 4K with a lot of gold on the map that seems to have their name on it.
I like to equate Fire Giant to 10,000 on its own. Pyromancer is still available to be cleared out. Every single tower sends the one that has just fallen, and Gold Fury respawning in the next 30 seconds as well. Obey could very easily balloon out their lead to the realm of 6, 7, 8, even 9,000 before they even have to knock on the door of a Phoenix. But it's up to SSG how they want to put up their defense, whether or not they want to defend around this objective. I doubt they group up on a Tier 1. They really shouldn't move into the Gold Tree itself, but putting up a soft defense at least on the Tier 2s with the relative safety of their draft should be pretty easy. If not to stop Obey, at least slow them down. And Obey's siege potential, this is where Double Hunter really comes to play. They are going to be absolutely blasting any tower they're allowed to make contact with. If SSG do want to put up a hard defense, they're going to have to do it on the tower line or just outside of it.
Cherio's in an awkward position, knows that all of Obey are sieging, but Obey know where Cherio is, so it's not too big of a concern. Clearly, Spacestation is not willing to try and put up a defense here up against this Double Hunter comp underneath towers, as Cherio proxies a wave between Tier 1 and Tier 2. Leads him to this left side, but not going to be enough to stop Obey on this Primal Fury, as they get Fury number 2 on their side. Should have been Fury number 3, but remember, Spacestation stole that Oni wave, or Oni Fury, excuse me, away from Obey Alliance. So far, I feel like the big problem for SSG, Mifflin, has been that Cherio has been pretty much neutralized in this game. The mid 3v3 for SSG, normally such a strong point, down a combined 5 levels, just 20 minutes in.
Yeah, it feels like Cherio's not really sure how he wants to play around this Morrigan pick, not having that additional AoE damage that he's so used to, either playing with Aphrodite or Hera or something along those lines. Instead, he's almost acting as a solo agent from minute 1, and it hasn't really worked out for him. A couple picks onto him have really put a damper on the early aggression, and now he's really suffering the consequences. Obey grouped up as 4, looking to push down this left side Phoenix. SSG are going to have to put up a defense here. If they don't do it here, they won't get it anywhere.
Noteworthy that Cherio has picked up that Void Shield. Going to be pretty impactful up against a very physical-heavy composition from Obey Alliance. Obey has a minute remaining on this FG buff, so that's about 2 waves they can stand here and wait for them to come in. The wave clear for SSG, not exactly top tier, having a Morrigan and a Jingwei as your backliners. So Obey might be able to do a little bit of chip work on this first one. 3-2 is the split. Inbound tanking up for Sino. Sino's going for kills. Woo! He's looking for Dardez. Good relic usage, though. Gets Dardez out, and now he's going to try and flip the script around. Good heal coming as well. But inbound's lurking in the waters might be enough to take him down, just short in the damage department. But Obey, all the while, is able to get the left side Phoenix. Raffer's ultimate, the only one used, and that was on the chase on that right side. Obey Alliance get at least one thing they came for, and that's the far side Phoenix.
They stripped 5 towers, the left side Phoenix, Gold Fury, and Pyromancer with that Fire Giant push with 20 seconds to spare. I'd say they did about as much as you could hope for. Now separating these two teams by 10,000, moving into this next objective, that left side Phoenix being the most important one, the hardest to defend once you want to put up defense around the Fire Giant as well. SSG playing into such a deep deficit might not even be able to move in towards this Fire Giant. It might go the way of Obey absolutely for free. And we got to see a little bit of it in that last engagement around the siege. Ducky playing on his own on the right side of the map while the rest of his team was grouped up on the left, able to use the Defender of Olympus to reposition himself to rejoin instead of having to trade out his teleport. That's an interesting usage of the god in the role that you don't get to see too often. I'm loving this playstyle from Obey, and this is something that they always do. They come in with these unique identities every single week, be it the Erlang Shen Ra matchup together, going for these long-range snipes, now this double hunter lineup as well. Obey seem to be experimenting with things as we get ready for Worlds.
Definitely a team that likes their synergies, and I think they play to them very well. It's a matter of doing them consistently enough to make it work. They certainly have here in game number 1. They've played great so far in this one. As Fire Giant respawns, SSG have pushed that Fire Wave up past the tier 1 and left, but that's about it. Inbound, a little bit wide on the pluck, and that'll cost him his ultimate. Did get the beads from Nika, so not a complete loss. Ducky, taunt onto Raffer. There's an ultimate coming through from Sino. As into the back line goes Cherio and Nika. Cherry kind of lost, but not as lost as Sino, as he's already down. Wowie has now come back down from his ultimate as Raffer just barely escapes the Fire Giant's fury. Dardes, Nika vote, still surging forward. Dardes closes the gap onto Wowie and finds the kill onto the enemy Rom. All of a sudden, what has happened to Obey Alliance? They were up. They had gotten the Phoenix. And Spacestation just absolutely crushed their dreams in that team fight. 4 for 0. In Mifflin, it wasn't even that close.
Not particularly. You're right. It wasn't. It all falls apart off that initial pluck miss from inbound, forcing out the lurking in the waters. The rest of Obey try to pick up the Fire Giant and at least pull it out. SSG chasing inbound out. Sino has to rotate off of Fire and try and peel out for his teammates, while the rest of his team is on the full-on retreat. Sino left high and dry in the back is going to fall for absolutely free. And then it seems like Obey, instead of using their mouths to calm, are VGSing. Save yourself, save yourself, save yourself. Splitting up completely inside of the engagement, giving SSG separate one-on-ones while just returning damage 0 on the side of Obey. And now, Fire Giant on 5 members of SSG. They're able to strip away the tier 1 mid tower. Gold Furies respawn as well. The exact same power play that Obey had is now afforded to SSG.
I just can't believe it was that easy for SSG. I mean, they hadn't won a team fight all game. They're down 8K. Left side at Phoenix is down, and they somehow win it. Unbelievable. Gold Fury goes Obey's way. They clearly are not too scared, but maybe they should be. That is a fat Dharmic Pillars coming from Raffer, and it's going to cost Ducky his life. Nika is able to get that, but that is all because of Raffer's ultimate. You want to talk about value out of a Ganesh ult, there is the poster child for that. Now SSG have a 5-on-4, but they've got to send someone back, and it'll be Cherio to defend this left side Phoenix that has just respawned.
See, this is exactly what I was worried about for Obey's draft. If one singular piece falls, if Ducky's dead, all of a sudden your engage is tarnished. You don't have any way to get huge value out of the Executioner or the double ADC. If inbound gets caught out of position, all of a sudden your backline peel doesn't exist anymore. You don't have the AoE damage to peel out for him because you're running a double hunter draft. One misplay for Obey completely closes up this game. Now only 2,000 gold separating these two teams at 25 minutes is nothing, but there's still a lot of neutral gold available on the map, and 2 minutes left on this Fire Giant push means that SSG could very easily come away with a Phoenix.
It also feels like that was the first real 5-on-5 brawl where both teams were, it was a little bit more Civil War style, just standing across a field at one another and staring each other down until it was time to go. In that situation, Obey has really been able to use these Nem ults in conjunction with Athena ults very effectively to insta-kill a frontliner, but when SSG has Cherio and Nika gunning down Wolfie and Wowie on the back end, it's not as easy for them to stand and put pot shots in to, say, Raffer, who got solo taunted into a Nem ult by Fire Giant and then lived, which cannot happen. If you're going to build the comp around it, I think that guy has got to die every time you dump the Nemesis ult into it on the taunt. Not the case for Obey that time around. Here we go again. Taunt on the Nika. A little bit of damage onto him, but Nika holds on to the relics. Neither beads nor thorns used while under siege. Now only a minute left as Ducky reprises once again. This time it's a blink forward from inbound, and everyone turns to help onto the Crocodile. Cheerios Typhoon knocks up 4 and does a bunch of damage, and Dardez sees the sign to get going. Dazzling Offensive gonna try and stun out Ducky and isolate him from the squad, but that is one tanky solo laner. He's still standing. Now it's Nika's turn to go into the back line, and finally Ducky falls to the hand of Dardez. Obey has been on the run for the last 10 seconds in Space Station Gaming, and so shows no signs of letting up. Left side Phoenix, now theirs on their side of the map.
Inbound steps up a little bit too far, gets caught out by the CC. Not enough follow-up to put him down here, but a huge pull from Cheerio!
Cheerio just decided he was done. He didn't want to play anymore. He was sick of this game number 1, and so he's going to blink forward, pull in 2, and end the game for Space Station Gaming. It looked good for Obey Alliance, but it didn't last for long. Space Station Gaming in 28 minutes, or just short of it, are able to take game 1.
Whew. Obey, man, it was a toothy, gritty way to climb your way to a lead, taking scrappy engagements around Fire Giant, Pyro, Gold Fury, and they were able to control those neutral objectives very well in the early, which was afforded to them by the huge DPS that their draft brought. But the second the team phase rolls around, one misplay, you said it was like a civil war where they lined up against each other. Inbound lined up on the wrong side of the map. He's standing over next to the SSG boys. He needed to be next to Wowie, next to his ADCs. And it just doesn't work out for him there. And SSG, one misplay is all it takes. When you're playing against the best, you got to play perfect.
We said SSG is slow to start, but they are the fastest team from 0 to 60. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind about that. They went well past 60 in that one, in terms of the speed at the very least. They turned it around, win game 1 quickly. We'll see what adjustments Obey Alliance makes in game number 2, right on the other side of this break.
Well, a great game from Obey. They're able to finally bring it all together and get the win. And wait, what's that? It only takes one small misplay up against a team like SSG and then you lose? Oh no, that's what happened. Obey were dominant for basically all of this game. Up 7,000 gold, left side Phoenix down. And one small mistake near the FG core, and this one gets away from them. Absolutely brutal. But that's what it's like when you're playing up against the best of the best, man. They do not give you a lot of room for errors.
I mean, that's almost how it always ends up happening, right? Is you can play picture perfect 9 times out of 10. The one time you make a mistake against a team like you had highlighted, like Spacestation or a team like Ghost, you're just going to get decimated in that moment. They will not show any mercy. And that was just one of those moments, and it sucks, man. They had such a good, I was actually talking to you about it. Go back to the last time SSG and Obey played. The first 15 minutes of both of those games were really good from Obey, and this is another one, I mean, even further beyond, up to, I guess, 22 minutes, because that was the last time they really got to find themselves a lot of success, that they just looked so stellar. They were playing well, they were doing everything what felt like correctly. And then, like you said, one small play around that Fire Giant opens up the door for SSG to come in and mop the floor, and then they were just not in it for the rest of the game.
They weren't. SSG, one of the cleanest teams at winning from when you're ahead. And I gave Inbound a hard time on Waiting Room today, right, about being on one of my supports that needed to step it up a little bit more. But I actually thought he played phenomenally through the first 15 minutes or so of this game. But he is the one whose positioning is askew, awry in that last team fight that kind of breaks it apart. Listen, Obey run this very unique composition, right, with these Guardians flanking to set up for this all-physical backline, double Hunter, Nemesis with Executioner to set up for all that damage. That the margins were thin, Gore, on that comp. If any piece went wrong, they were going to struggle to close that out.
Yeah, and I think it did just come down, and like you said, it kind of highlighted just one small mispositioning from Inbound opens up the floodgates for SSG. I mean, it is almost ruthless what they ended up doing there throughout the rest of that, because they didn't hesitate for a second. And granted, you're not supposed to. You're a pro league team. You're never going to hold back. But the fact that they just kind of came through, I mean, that is Itachi versus the Uchiha clan for the last, 7 minutes, right? I mean, he just slaughtered anyone and everyone. They maybe could have left someone alive just to remain, but that was just too much, almost, for SSG. But hey, they're up 1-0. I think it's, if anything, demoralizing for Obey, right? I mean, try going into a Game 2 after controlling all of Game 1 and then losing at the last second.
Yeah, especially because I'm not so sure this composition is going to be nearly as successful again now that SSG have seen it, right? They know what to expect from this double Guardian sort of setup for all this double Hunter backline. Let's get into the picks and bans for game number 2 and see, Gore, if Obey are forced to make a ton of adjustments now that SSG have seen that composition and know how to expect Obey to play it.
That's the question. I mean, do you even bring it all back? What do you pick in that you can bring back? I think Sobek looked really good. I think it's worth going back to if you're Obey. Maybe banning out here if you're SSG. Yeah. But, Athena, do you risk an Athena ban to let something else through that Ducky's played more often and maybe more successfully? I don't think you really lean that route. I think Obey could very potentially run the same thing back, but like you said, it does a better job if it's kind of surprising you, keeping you on your toes. Now they know what to expect in the first few minutes. That would slow down that duo lane. Even if you get Sobek ROM this time, I don't think SSG are really going to let you have that much control over there. And it was actually a really weird one, because even halfway through, I distinctly remember saying, I was looking at the chat and seeing people say, jungle diff and things like that, and I was like, you don't typically get to hear that said about Sino, especially when you're playing against someone like Cherio. So I'm wondering if maybe he's going to pivot, because some of that early game for Cherio did not look that great. His end play, I think, really helped make up for it, but he really needs to kind of help separate that throughout the entire game instead of all kind of backloading it.
No, you're right. I mean, how often does Cherio get jungle diffed? Almost never, right? I mean, this guy is right there behind Sam, I think, in terms of our most impactful junglers that we have here in the league right now. And in that game, Sino was better for him. And then in that last team fight, things are outside of Sino's control as far as I could tell. It's not his fault things go awry. So unfortunately, it just wasn't anything they could do to save that one. But to catch up on these bans a little bit, everything looking standard. The Ra getting banned away, the Persephone, and the Yamoja all banned. And Obey keeping the same bans as well. The Afro, the Hera, into the Erlong Shen. And last game, SSG first picked this Amaterasu. I don't think you necessarily have to first pick this pick. You're not afraid of Ducky having it, but hey, maybe you do want to take this first pick. Get it back to Nika. The dude very rarely loses on this pick, so go ahead and give it to him as long as it's working.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's lost once of all of the games he had played. I think last time you had said it was 15 wins. Now it should be 16 wins of 17 plays. He's literally only had the one slip-up. And I like the ROM for Obey. I actually really liked the ROM Sobek. I think that's something that you almost can't go wrong with over there in the duo lane.
Agreed.
I think it's a very easy pick for them and something you could very easily lock in. But they go for the Athena. And look, Finch, I love Athena. I love Athena's support. I think she works well in solo. Cherio himself has showcased you can play her in the jungle. Sometimes not successfully, sometimes successfully. I think that might be a little bit too meta of old. But she's been flexible. She's got a ton. She's got a really good passive. She has block stacks that are built into her kit. Defender of Olympus is one of my, even though it doesn't maybe feel as impactful as it could be, helps you teleport across the map, gives some protections to whoever you're targeting. Like, all of what she does is very fun. But there's a reason that nobody else is top 2ing her. It's just she's not maybe going to be the most impactful support. If this is Ducky going over to the solo lane again, then maybe it feels good. He was able to control Nika a little bit there early on, had the level lead, had the experience lead, but that's a very confident top 2 to be able to say, you know what, we need this over the Sobek, knowing SSG can take it.
I don't like this very much, right? If Obey are going to run the same composition again, I think it is fine if they end up making some adjustments, but what was critical here was the Nemesis ultimate onto the person Athena was taunting, and then you have the Sobek in the backline providing all that peel, and already SFG have done a good job, I think, of breaking that combo up a little bit by stripping away the Sobek, and now by prioritizing the top 2 of the ROM and the On Her, this gives the opportunity over to SSG to break up another key piece of this in that Nemesis if they want to ban it away. Obviously, Double Hunter can still win, but I think Obey are going to have to make some adjustments into how they play this if SSG respond the way they think they might and try and limit some of the comp that Obey had last game.
Well, they go back to the On Her, and this is actually interesting. The first time you go back to that duo lane, the very beginning, Dardes transforms over into On Her, and everyone's like, all right, this is exactly what was set up. We've been talking about it. He was one of the ones that made it look good. And then he missed like every single spear of his ult, and we're like, maybe it's just a little rusty. Maybe, warm up round. Either way, again, worked out for him here. I think it's going to be another case of maybe being more beneficial to SSG for Obey to go right back to it, because now he's played a little bit of On Her. He's been able to get in game 1, so he'll be able to bring that in for game 2. Also, he has Sobek and Amaterasu, which I think are both great transform targets on that side. I like the picks. I think Obey is doing a good call because they did control most of that game. You shouldn't shrug that off. It's all positioning and in-game stuff that needed changed. But you lost one of the biggest pieces that you had early on, so I want to know what they're doing. If this is Athena support or if they're going to be able to scoop something else up maybe a little bit later on.
Well, I think this Fafnir ban is pretty heads up as well, Gore, to take that away. I mean, in a world where this Athena was going solo to Ducky and there is no more Sobek, then a Fafnir is a great pick for them to still be able to provide some peel inside the ultimate, and obviously with the AoE coerce. We might now see Bobby come down to something like the Kuzenbo, which has been a popular pick for him. Potentially even the Amir, but I don't know if that has the same synergy they had before. As it is going to be the Nemesis, SSG elect not to ban that one away, so Sino gets that key piece of the puzzle back on the side of Obey.
Alright, so here's how I love Chang'e, and now I'm going over to see how many wins they actually have with Chang'e on the side of SSG.
Can't be a lot.
They like picking her in, and like again, she doesn't come through too often. I actually think now that I'm looking at it, what is there, 2, maybe 3 times? 4 times she's been picked, so she's 2-2 with them. I mean, I guess you go even so you can be somewhat confident in it. And I like her. Again, anti-heal that comes through, maybe not as beneficial in this game as it would be against maybe something like a Hell that we've seen in the past. But really good stun, really good mobility. A lot of people don't think about that, but the ability to kind of spam your abilities and get a little bit of burst move with your dances to help you disengage. I think she's got a lot that can be brought to the team. But I do think that this Nemesis is going to be able to handle her pretty well. I mean, you force out her 2, that immunity disappears, and then you can just start getting aggressive into her. As long as that cooldown is down, you should be able to control that matchup.
Well, it's the Hachiman selected for Vote. The Chang'e, as you already covered, has been selected here too. And now, Hey, Gore, is this who's going in the jungle here? I mean, is it this Morrigan? Is that what it's going to be? Which one of these?
Oh.
Is Cheerio playing over here for SSG? And Obey, I mean, I think we knew the Amir was likely one that Bobby could come down to, but this SSG draft a little different, I might say.
It's gotta be Jungle Morrigan because she plays a lot like an assassin, but part of me's really hoping for Jungle Chang'e just because I want to see them. I want to see him do it. I want to believe that that's a thing that could happen. And it'd be interesting. I don't think it would work very well, but it'd be interesting to say the least. Either way, I think Morrigan can go over there. It's going to be an interesting one. Again, Cherry is one of the most flexible jungle players, so this could be a really hot pick for them for SSG. And also could kind of trip up Obey not knowing how to deal with it.
Yeah, maybe it could. Maybe they put the Ama jungle. Chang'e could go solo, but I guess normally you don't want to put mages over there, but if you think it'll be an Athena, there is less pressure in that lane that would normally come from a warrior, I suppose. So it's still an option. SSG has me guessing, and I think they're hoping that they've got Obey guessing as well. But do you think this comp can work a second time with the Amir here instead?
I don't know. The Sobek, the benefit is that you have that engage from much further away. Ymir is very telegraphed. Like, I mean, you can get a great wall, great freeze, and usually that can be enough to set up those kills. But early on, you're not going to be able to have the same potency, in my mind, as a pluck, right? The freeze, like, I can tell when you're running past the wave to try and freeze me down. And there's a couple of frames there when he starts the animation that you can still react pretty fast to get out of there. So it feels like it might slow Obey down a little bit more in the early game. I still think they have a lot of early game pressure, though, and that might end up helping them out get another lead. It's just maintaining that. Position-wise, I think Ymir's a little riskier, and if you're looking at positioning, that's what cost them the last game. It might end up costing them this game as well.
We'll see how it ends up working out. Obey and SSG both bringing in some interesting drafts as we move on to Game 2.
Thank you, Finch and Gore. Game 2 getting ready to start, and if you're just joining us, Obey Alliance, I won't go as far as say they had it in the bag, Miff, but that was their game to lose in game number 1, and they lost it. SSG played great, made some plays down the stretch, but if Obey Alliance gets that sort of lead again, I think they've got to really convert this time around. It is not the Chang'e jungle. I thought we were going to be treated to the DJ Pernicus special. Instead, it's Nika on the Chang'e, Cheerio on the Ama in the jungle, and Spacestation's obsession with playing Chang'e wherever they can continues.
Yeah, just a group collective think here of Chang'e's gotta be good. We'll get it somewhere in the draft. But you know what, Aggro? I'm gonna go into it. You said that they didn't have it in the bag. They had it in the bag, man! They were grouped up as 5 on Fire Giant, 10,000 gold up, with fire minion waves flooding into the left side Phoenix. All they had to do was wait, and Obey would have very easily been able to take a 5 versus 4 engagement on the Fire. But you know what? We're in Game 2. Let's talk about something else. Obey, bring the exact same draft, just about. It's only going to be a substitution inside of that support role. Inbound, instead of the Sobek, is going to be taking Ymir this time around. And I would say if the roles is Ducky engages, inbound peels for the backline, they've come away objectively weaker here, a slightly worse version of the exact same draft. I'm worried about how well Inbound's going to be able to perform in the early game on this pick up against Raffer, who's been playing very well on the Sobek. If Ymir gets plucked, he might just lose his life.
Certainly scary with this Ymir, but Inbound has made it work fairly often. We've seen a lot of teams start to pick up this Ymir, notably Renegades and Ghost. I just don't know, Miff. I don't know if this composition is going to work as well with the Ymir instead of the Sobek. It feels like a pick or a composition that really relied on having multiple ways to get beads and engage a little bit more safely. Ymir has engaged. I would not describe it as safe.
Agreed completely. I was surprised that we saw him decide to go to this Ymir pick when Kuzumbo was available. I think that would have fit his play style, this draft, a lot better. It's something that we know that Inbound has in the back pocket, but instead he really has been favoring the Ice Giant recently. So here's the hope, and he's able to perform well on the early game. But the early game is a part where Ymir can simultaneously struggle and absolutely pop off. The Frostbite passive should help him out in 1v1 trades. If Raffer ever misses his pluck, that should instantly result in at least 50% of his health bar getting tripped away as well. I think Obey have the tools to do the exact same things. It's just going to be a lot thinner margins this time around.
It's going to be difficult, and they were able to make those margins work a lot in game number 1, so we'll see if they can do that again here in game number 2. I do want to talk a little bit more about this Chang'e because I think it does make sense for Nika in this game. You're getting a free laning phase against Athena. The whole pick is designed to leave lane as often as possible with use of that ultimate. If Nika can sit here and get free farm, not die to ganks, I mean, you don't have to worry about the Athena damage so much. I think that this Chang'e can be very potent come the team fight phase.
And not only does he not have to worry about laning against the Athena, but even when ganks do decide to roll their way around there, having the Moonlight Waltz to avoid the taunt means that there's really no way that Cyno's going to be able to lock down this Chang'e on his own. They're going to have to catch him sleeping at the wheel, I'd say, is for the only way Nika falls down inside the laning phase in of itself. And Chang'e is a pick that, you know, has been a little bit contentious within the SPL. Some people think it can be very good. The one certifiable battle mage within the game, getting additional mobility, being able to hold W while spamming her abilities. But the early game is really where she struggles, and as you said, it's going to be a free laning phase. Nika might just be able to rotate in at level 18 for free.
And that's exactly where Chang'e wants to be, is late game, items in tow, and being this exceptionally annoying god to deal with in team fights. It is no secret how I feel about Chang'e these days, and I'm just glad I'm not in Ducky's shoes. I can tell you that much. I can't imagine it would be a whole lot of fun for him in this sort of matchup, but as we said, he's not really supposed to stay there all that often anyways, is vote a little bit of trouble on that left-hand side, but not as much trouble as Cyno is in, impaled just wide from Dardes, and Cyno is out. At least got Ducky's ultimate on cooldown for it, but Changeling ultimate so much more valuable early on, and a much, much longer cooldown than what Ducky has as well.
Yeah, surprised to see the Dardes commit to using the Honor Her ult on the wave there as well. Had he found the stun, I don't even think there's really any world where he does get the solo kill there. Forcing out Athena ult, I think, is the most value possible he gets, besides potentially just forcing Cyno to go back to base. So maybe a little bit of a misplay for the Morgan to get a little over-committal. Had Raffer been a little bit further forward, we might have seen the pluck come through on the tail end, potentially lining up for a kill, but even then, it would have been very difficult. So I think that, if anything, both teams kind of go away here. Clean slate, trying to wait until this Dardes ult comes back online.
Good poke damage from Cherio on this Ama in the jungle. I was going to talk about that, but Raffer might be out of... Nope, he's good. Ama in the jungle is something that we've seen a lot because we've been watching SOC/SCC. It was really kind of the flavor of the last playoffs. It was Mollusk playing a lot in jungle, Mask played at a decent amount in the jungle. It was pretty good there. I don't know if we'll see those same styles of builds. Mollusk in particular was going crit sometimes on this pick. I don't think we're going to see that. I agree with the noise that you just made. But, I mean, I think you could make it work. A little stone-cutting sword, Crusher might be a little much, but stone-cutting sword into Sledge, something along those lines. You do a lot of damage. You can be in more fights as Amaterasu, which is what your team really wants from you. I've got no problem with Cherry flexing this pick into the jungle.
Yeah, I think it's really good, as well as just a huge utility tool once you get into those team fights. Dazzling offensive, the only way to make it better is to have it applied a little bit earlier on. Ducky, hold on. Where are you headed? Just into the mid, trying to get away from that situation, maybe worried about a little bit of poke going his way. I don't like him using the ultimate in that situation, but maybe we hold that thought as Raffer finds a little bit of a fight.
Inbound's going to use his ultimate as well. There comes a horrific emblem, but Sprint was ready coming from Inbound. Oh, and the Athena ult sounds pretty nice right about now, but it's Dardes. But what a wall coming from Inbound. No problem whatsoever. Walls off the Confound and make sure that he isn't going to get taunted in. What a play from Obey's support. You want to talk about stepping up and making something work? I think he did just that right there. Blink in from Cyno. As Votes now in a world of danger, tries to trade out his own life, uses the beads, but hell, okay, I was going to say he's still alive. Cyno decides that's enough of that. Slice and Dice claims first blood for Obey Alliance.
Yeah, Sino hits him with a little bit of a drive-by there. Fantastic play from inbound. If he gets hit by that taunt, he loses his life. If he loses his life, Obey loses all potential for the fight. Inbound single-handedly saving that engagement for his team. Cherio, unfortunately, wasn't able to get there for the fight, but Wolfie, no jump. You're caught, bud.
And no beads usage either. That's because Wolfie knew he was fine all along. Dark Omen a little bit wide left, and Dardes may have overcommitted. Sino not enough damage in the kit in order to get that kill. I want to talk about some confidence there for the young man in the mid lane for Obey. Holds the beads with everyone right around him. Wolfie still ends up surviving.
Braver man than I could ever be. My beads would be on cooldown 3 separate ways as I vibrate on my beads button, essentially, trying to get out of there. I respect the play. I respect him not even using the ultimate to try and avoid out that CC, and now Obey's fight potential doesn't take even a little bit of a hit. Fortunately for SSG, a slight overcommit onto a kill does at least result in a red buff invade, so they should be able to get control of that timer and potentially try and work their way in continually.
Obey doing what they did in game 1, going for objectives, inbound on the receiving end of a pluck, but he's got help coming. As what just happened to Wowie? He just got popped by Vote. Double kill for him as he's claimed Sino as well, but Ducky's going to get some revenge. Level 11 now
nice
on
pillar.
This Athena. That pillar is a work of art from Wolfie. Taunt in from Ducky as well, straight into a wall. I don't know if Cherio's going to have enough damage on the back end to take down either of these frontliners. Obey Alliance get the objective, and they trade 2 for 1.
Inbound, thinking about going back in here. He's alone, so if he gets hit by the pluck, Stone Cutting Sword on this Amaterasu might be enough to get the kill back for his team, but he's able to walk out of there just fine. Interesting that Cherio does decide to go for the Stone Cutting immediately. Normally, gods like Amaterasu really benefit from picking up the Golden Blade just to expedite a little bit of that farming process, but hold that thought. Wowie, you're surrounded.
Cherio still present on this left-hand side. Nowhere for Wowie to go. No beads up. Horrific Emblem guarantees the kill, and Cherio puts his first mark on this game with a kill in duo and a purple buff invade on the back end. Definitely not ideal, as now Wowie has taken back-to-back deaths, which is usually the worst thing that can happen to you. Wolfie's jumped away, and inbound wishes he had the luxury. No stun coming from Cherio that time as Dardes goes, let me show you how it's done, buddy. Gonna put the stun on Wolfie's head, but not enough damage for him. Vote has some good damage over the wall, but still a slight bit short as Obey walks away. Looks like they secured red and didn't lose a member. Well played, as here comes Sino and Ducky on the rotation.
Nice little ultimate from Sino, now trying to Voltron together with Ducky. The Athena ult comes through, but he's surrounded by 3. Nice tail whip, is able to peel it out.
Oh, Vote just not able to curve that archer shot wanted style around the wall and ends up letting Sino go. That Dark Omen explosion damage may have been enough with that Hachi ult in tow, but either way, a lot of scrappy fights so far in this one here, Miff. Nothing to really show for it in terms of a massive lead quite yet. In fact, despite Obey getting first blood, getting the first objective of the game in the form of that Gold Fury, it's SSG who have the slight gold lead and a more noticeable experience lead.
3,000 XP at the 11-minute mark is huge. We're talking about 1 level in between the junglers, a level in the mid as well, and now 2 levels, the largest disparity out of that ADC role. Wowie's been forced to rotate to these fights defensively every single time, which is creating space for Vote to go ahead and farm up for free. And unfortunately for Wowie as well, he's just about every death for his team, 66% of them to be exact. It's been pretty obvious where SSG want to put their aggression this game, and it's been largely centered around this duo lane, be it on the purple buff or red, and it seems like that's the strategy going forward. We've got 4 grouped up over here.
Vote is massive. Now remember, he's the one who fell for first blood, but it just feels like you get double punished, even more than double punished, whenever you die, respawn, and then die again, which is exactly what happened to Wowie. Remember, he died on Gold Fury, walked back to purple, got killed by Cherio and Raffer, and all that time, Vote's able to farm. He's really put it to good use so far. Good wall coming from inbound once again. This lurking in the waters used the CC immunity only coming from Raffer, but it's not going to save his life. Wow. It requires 3 ultimates from Obey Alliance, but they get the kill onto Raffer as Wowie has been chased down behind his tier 2. His Vote clotheslines him off the horse, truly off the top rope, and Wowie is not having a fun game too.
Yeah, Cherio catches him just trying to rotate out of that Phoenix, immediately loses 80% of his health bar. Vote very happy to pick up a free kill and a tier 1 tower. Obey, on the other hand, pick up Pyromancer for themselves, and a little bit of a counter rotation. It's going to be inbound and Wolfie rotating in. Good luck catching Cherio, that man's fast.
Yeah, he's out of there. Stone Cutting Sword movement speed, Ama movement speed, Ancient Blade he's working towards. Something in that tree, if I had to guess, it'll probably be a Toxic Blade. He's going to be moving in this one for sure. And poor Wowie, man. If he were streaming right now, he'd probably be checking the viewer list, accusing someone of stream sniping, catching him between the Phoenix and the tier 2. But that's, at times, just good Smite. When you know someone's reset, you know they're walking back to lane, and they're level 10. For context, Wowie is a level down to his own support in this game. I don't see a way in which Spacestation lets him continue to exist without dying again. Seems like a pretty free kill for SSG every time they go left side.
Yeah, just to further point out how much my man is struggling right now, we are coming up on 14 minutes into the game. He doesn't have Devos stacked yet. He hasn't been allowed to touch minions in his lane. He gets caught out every single time just trying to farm it up for free. But now Obey get a small win for themselves, able to confirm their purple buff and their red buff, stopping the aggression from Space Station because their attention was elsewhere, called a Primal.
And Space Station get it. Sino blinks in, but it's too little too late. Gonna turn his attention towards Raffer, who once again is on the receiving end of numerous Obey Alliance ultimates, but this time he's still standing until he's not. 5 ultimates needed to bring down Raffer, and I don't think he minds too much. An objective goes SSG's way, and a bunch of ultimates are required to take down the support. Now the question is, can Obey leverage this 5-on-4 properly as inbound
Nika
meets up with Cherio. Big ultimate coming from Vote. Nika's right there alongside him as Cherio's going to cut down Wowie, and Wolfie is just an afterthought. Another good wall coming from inbound, and you know what he gets for that? Nothing, and a whole lot of it. He's dead, inbound's dead, Sido's dead, they're all gone. Obey Alliance gets wiped in the mid lane. They might have gotten some damage on the tier 1, but that's all they're gonna get. Dardez just looking for the final pot shot, deicide for SSG, and they are able to go wherever they want. Fire Giant tier 2, whatever SSG pleases.
And it looks like it might be a Fire Giant call. 15 minutes in, this is one of the faster ones we've seen in the SPL so far. DPS is pretty low at this point. It's only Atalanta's bow and Devos for Vote, so he's going to have to work very slowly on this. But take a peek at the pathing from Obey. They haven't realized that it's happening, or they have, and they just don't care. Wowie rotating to the left side removes all potential for a steal. Meanwhile, Dardez hovering around. If Wowie steps too far forward, we might get a second burst, same as the first. Might just lose his life.
No ultimate here for Dardez, and he hasn't reset, so not a lot of itemization. Don't think he can really make this happen easily, despite
16.
his, yeah, that's true, massive level advantage coming out of this Morrigan. Not a great spot to be in here for Obey, to put it lightly, as inbound commits in order to steal away this red buff. Nika on this Chang'e, man, it was sneaky. Was just right there underneath the tier 1, found a great ultimate. Vote was right on top of it as well. And Obey went from feeling confident in a 5v4 to realizing that Raffer's really not worth 5 ultimates. They might have 5 people, but without an ultimate available, SSG make Obey pay.
And Raffer, realizing all the attention they've been willing to put onto him, goes for the Mantle of Discord very early on. That CC immunity, once he falls low, should be able to get him out of some of these sticky situations. But that Chang'e ultimate, man, what a game changer. Blinks in, finds 3 immediately, forces Obey to firmly tuck their tails between their legs, yip like a dog, and run away as the rest of Space Station is able to surge forward. And now, Wowie, you've been here before, but this time it's Wolfie.
Oh, this time it's Wolfie, and I don't think Wowie's going to be able to help out a whole lot. Here comes Vote, cavalry in the literal sense of the word, but it's not enough as Sino is able to get Dardez. Good pre-beats coming from Vote, as he's going to need to use the Aegis here as well. First shot immune, second and third don't hit anything, as Wowie just relegated to farming. Level 16 Athena might be able to do a little bit of damage to Vote without any relics, but seems pretty healthy to me, courtesy of that Fire Giant buff. So 1 for 1, Dardez for Wolfie, not exactly a trade that I think Space Station is stoked about, but doesn't matter too much if Cherio can continue to get this kind of value. Tier 2 on the right-hand side falls. Looks like SSG not going to stretch their luck and just look for the last remaining Obey Tower.
It's almost casual destruction from Space Station. Looks like they're getting a little bit lenient with their lead, grouping up slightly, just looking for picks wherever they can. Meanwhile, Cherio takes down that Tier 2 on the right-hand side. And now we're starting to see him get back to that disciplined playstyle. Let's not take the risk, group up, take the Pyromancer, the free objective, and let's back, spend this gold. Gold Fury's respawning in a minute. They've got 1 minute and 30 on this Fire Giant. I would be surprised if we don't see SSG immediately group back up, go for this Tier 2 mid tower, and then fall back towards gold.
Last game, Myth, it was really the 3v3 core for Obey, getting ahead in XP. Sino in particular really being a driving force for this Obey team, but for whatever reason, whether it's the Sobek pick for Raffer or the Ama pick for Cherio, I feel like Obey just lost a lot of that aggressiveness that they had in game number 1. They were still there early for the first Gold Fury pull, but then as soon as WoWie fell super far behind, that kind of takes them out of the being early and burning objectives game plan because they don't have any threat on those objectives because he was too far behind. It's been rough here for Obey Alliance in game number 2, and that looks to continue as Wolfie just lost beads, Sino lost his ult, and Raffer lost about 80 HP.
Maybe. That's generous. I'm glad you're willing to be generous with the Obey boys. He's going to need it going forward. 7,000 gold, now 8,000 separating these two teams. But Cherio in a little bit of trouble. Maybe I spoke too soon, and one quick dash out is going to get him out of that situation. And now Space Station, no slouches, going to group up around that Gold Fury. Obey, they've got no course of action here. They lost their agency. The best they could do is potentially force down this Tier 2.
No beats here for Cherio, but he's got an Athena of his own coming to help out. Not so fun, is it, Ducky, as Dardez has transformed, but Ducky doesn't go very far with that Defender of Olympus, but a great double taunt. See ya later, double kill for Sino. Good response from Obey Alliance to get over and assist as the 2v2 turns into a 2v5 very, very quickly. No chance for Dardez and Cherio to win that one.
Nice little pickup there. I was worried for Ducky. It seemed like he wanted to hold out of there, but Sino dragged him back in, kicking and screaming in the engagement, said, no, it's a good fight, and it certainly was. Obey pick up 2 for 0, but Fire Giant respawns in 20 seconds, as does the majority of SSG. If Obey want to make a proactive play here, it's going to have to be fast, and it's going to have to be nearly perfect. The best I think they can get easily is potentially the defensive positioning around Fire Giant, but with the deficit that they're playing at, I don't think there's a world in which they can pull it.
Look at the player damage charts. 3 red jerseys, including the mid and the ADC, all at the bottom. It's been a tough sledding so far for Obey, but they're going to look to change that now. Fire Giant down, below half HP. In comes Nika. Another blink for him. His inbound trying to secure it. And Obey Alliance do manage to get the Fire Giant. Ducky able to use that ultimate to try and help peel and get his team away, as Nika's ultimate already down, looking at a 5-stack of Obey longingly, but no waxing moon available for him. Cherio blinks in, slowing inbound down. A great taunt from Ducky. Pillar usage fantastic as well. But Dardez is mad, looking to get at least one back. Vote gonna cut down inbound. Ducky's gonna be next. A double kill for the Hachiman. And Obey Alliance get the Fire Giant, but it costs them more than an arm and a leg. Right side Phoenix will be added to the check unless Obey can step up and stop him.
Wolfie does step up the impale enough to get him off of the Phoenix right there. Is able to force SSG to take a couple steps backwards with 30 seconds left on Ducky, 20 seconds left on inbound. It's going to be a 3 versus 4 for the foreseeable future.
Wowie, no relics. He's got to roll away. Vote going to have to disengage as well. Good defense so far coming from Obey, and with both inbound and Ducky back on the respawn, it's time to back it up. A little surprising that Space Station's unable to get that Phoenix, and that's because we're so used to seeing Morrigans have Polynomicon, which ups that siege potential considerably. Dardez has not picked up the Polynomicon, at least quite yet in the build. He went Soul Reaver, now working towards what I'm guessing is going to be a Soul Gem. And without that Poly, it makes it pretty difficult for SSG to crack the base.
It is, and I don't think we're going to see a poly either. He's going to want some more percent pen likely in that last 6th item slot. Maybe potentially if this game goes a little bit longer, we'll see it go into the true 6-slotted. He might pick up the Polynomicon, but he did forego it last game as well, instead electing to play this more utility ranged damage version of the Morrigan, which I can appreciate, especially against a team comp like this. When you're worried about Ducky on Athena being able to find a taunt on you, it's very unlikely that you're willing to move in aggressively and make use out of that Polynomicon. So I like this slight adjustment from them. Obey, maintain Fire Giant on 3 members. Whether or not they're going to be willing to push, I really don't think so. They might just use this time to try and refarm a little bit, make sure everyone levels up. Wowie's still level 17. Inbound still level 16. Even Ducky hasn't quite ticked over to 20 just yet. And now, in mid, Sino loses a lot of health.
And Dardes is going to look to try and make it all of his health. Ducky's ultimate is incoming, and the beads are good coming from Sino. Aegis from Dardes going to help out, but not enough. D-transforms, nowhere to go. Ducky finds his 2nd kill of this game. Sino now no beads, but still alive, still has Fire Giant, and Dardes is not up any longer for SSG. No relics for him. Obey Alliance, remember, they're down 6K right now. A little bit less important than it was 5 minutes ago when they were also down 6,000 gold. But this has been an impressive showing from them, standing tall against a big lead coming from Space Station.
But it's a good defense there as well to pick up the kill on a Dardes, but with 30 seconds left, maybe the best they could do is take down a tier 1, then back up to the Oni. I don't think they feel confident going for a tier 2 just yet, and these tier 2s are becoming more and more important as time goes on. Obey wants to expose the base of SSG if they want any way to find a win condition. If even one bird is exposed, it means that if they win a team fight cleanly, they could potentially win the game as well, which is why we see them grouping up here, but this is dangerous. Dardes has already respawned.
No ultimate for him quite yet, but can always transform into that Athena. He's done multiple times in this game. Tier 2 tower goes down without a whole lot of noise from SSG as Inbound has set up a trap. He's walled off Raffer, and Raffer's got nowhere to go. Vote on the run from Sino and from Wowie and from Ducky. Finally, Vote goes down, but it costs Wolfie his life as Raffer's able to set that up. Dardes has returned. He's joined the fray, using that Changeling ultimate, and now the script is flipped. Map sides are upside down as Sino has his back to the enemy base, and Dardes has already found Wowie. It's a little bit too split up for Obey, and SSG are picking up the pieces quite well. Ducky get a fall as well, and it's just Sino left standing against 4 members of SSG looking to secure the sweep.
It's the exact same issue Obey had last game. This draft, this style of draft that they're running, cannot take split-up engagements. They need every individual tool together to work as a whole. If Inbound's diving, it means that all of a sudden your backline has no peel. If Sino's not there, you're not getting the defense shred to get all the potential out of these double hunters. If Ducky's not there, not only are you missing out on peel, but your engage potential is lost as well. You're not locking down a target for these hunters to burn through. So when Sino and Ducky commit fully towards the backline trying to find a pickup on SSG, they find their kill. But meanwhile, SSG just wins the team fight in the back. The rest of Obey, left high and dry, aren't able to deal with the pressure. Dardes finds a fantastic 2-man stun onto Inbound and Wowie, and from there, it was over. The damage output was too high. Obey have to stay together if they want to win.
They didn't there, and got a little bit dicey for them. Hey, they still got Vote, but that's about all they got. Now you look at their relic situation on Obey. Not looking a whole lot better. Space Stations isn't exactly pristine, but looking a little bit better off for now. Sino, first one in. Dardes gonna transform instantly into that Amaterasu, and Sino is down to a sliver of HP, but Wolfie saves his life, but only for a moment. Cherio does eventually get the kill onto the enemy jungler. Good damage coming out of that ultimate from Inbound, but it's not enough.
Huge
as
wall.
he goes down, or watches his teammate go down. Great wall coming from him. Still 3 for 1 in SSG's favor.
And now Inbound plugged in. It's going to trade out Rapper's life. Inbound able to get out, gets the wall off, doesn't save his life. Vote picks up the kill. And now we're knocking on the board of the base. Wolfie, no jump, might lose his life.
Oh, he's got nowhere to go. D aside for SSG in a very, very contested 27-minute game. You want to talk about action. We barely had time to talk about anything else. Lots of fighting here in game number 2, but the result is the same. Wowie head in hands as Obey Alliance drops 2-0 to Spacestation Gaming.
But were you expecting it to be that scrappy? Were you expecting Obey to put up that much of a fight against the top of the leaderboard, SSG? It looks to me like, sure, they're coming in with a new strategy every week. Sometimes it works, this time it doesn't. But they're coming up with things that can be applied once we get into these higher stakes games. Maybe it doesn't work against SSG, but who's to say it won't work against the middle of the pack, United, Renegades, even PK. Obey's punching up right now, and they're not looking too bad for it.
They aren't. But Mifflin, we're getting towards the part of the year where moral victories are counting for less and less.
Fair.
Obey running out of time to get out of that 8th seed. See if they can do 7th seed, excuse me. I believe United is now in 8th seed. We'll see what happens moving forward with this team. A good performance coming out of Obey, but SSG stay on top of the league alongside Ghost. So we're back to Finch and Gore for the breakdown.
Well, that's it for the SPL this week, but we still got to talk about how everything happened, right? Obey give SSG a run for their money in both games, but are not able to close any of them out and actually find any wins. SSG still remain up at the top alongside Ghost. And Gore, here in this one, we got to see the double hunter composition again, this time with the Athena and the Amir flanking it to try and help out. And it got pretty close, but they couldn't quite find a way to consistently get some wins in that one.
A lot of good, really scrappy fights that end up favoring Obey throughout a lot of it, but the difference between Game 1 and this game is that you slowly watch SSG get what is up to a 6,000 gold lead, and for a period of time, they just maintained that, which I think is solid for Obey, showcasing that they don't have to fall behind just because they're already behind, and kind of maintaining that difference in gap. But unfortunately, it means that when the same process ended up happening kind of at the same timing for SSG, it just made it easier to find those wins and kind of turn things around. And honestly, felt like it was going to be done a little bit faster. I mean, there was a 15-minute Fire Giant done by SSG here ends up kind of just getting thrown to the wayside. It really was this fight here at 24 minutes that solidified the win for SSG, though. A nice separated fight for them means a win. Then they can start pressuring out elsewhere. Cherio gets aggressive. I think Dardes had just died here, but it didn't really matter. They locked down everybody else on Obey like it was nothing, and were very happy to go ahead and get themselves a win.
They were, and there are a couple times throughout this set where SSG got a little bit ahead of themselves. I mean, I'm thinking about this play in mid where Dardes turns into the Ama, tries to hunt down Sino, and then Sino's backup comes, and Dardes is too far from his own teammates to get any help. But still, SSG, I think when they're ready to, when they want to clean everything up and play kind of by the book, so to speak, and they make sure they're playing 100% clean, it's going to be hard to touch them, man. This is a game where they were a little bit, you know, kind of outside of those lines here this time, but it goes to show even then SSG are a hard team to try and slow down. Nika making the Chang'e solo look good, 3-0 and 13. Cherio making the Ama jungle look good as well. I mean, this is SSG winning with a non-traditional composition as well.
Yeah, I think that the way that they were able to kind of shift things around for them worked out. I mean, we were playing kind of puzzle pieces with it as we went into the game, but they made it look good. Chang'e solo's not something we've gotten to see in what feels like years, so she's always nice to have come out, showcase why she is good over there and what she's able to bring to the table. Especially because I said to you, here's why I love it. At the very beginning, for the first, like 7 minutes, it feels like you don't even have to leave the lane. You're perfectly fine and comfortable. Again, they just transitioned a good early game into a great late game with a lot of good fights.
They did. It was clean play, or at least towards the end, clean play there from SSG, able to help them overcome Obey. It's Dardes, by the way, the one that's standing by for the post-game interview, so we can see how he's feeling after the win.
That's right, we got Dardes here. Dardes, first things first, Raffer just tweeted a clip of you immediately looking at your phone as soon as you guys decided Obey. Were you ordering some food? Are you really hungry? Like, are you doing okay? I just wanted to see what you were up to.
I was texting my parents, to tell them I won. So, I mean, nothing, nothing spicy, Just a classic.
Hey, man, breaking news. I love the priority. Family first for Dardes. Definitely good to know.
Always.
I also have to ask you, how hard was Nika begging Cherio to play Amaterasu in game number 2? I know that he's been desperate to not have to play Ama every game.
So, okay. So, like, we first page, okay? And Cherry, without even asking Nika, literally insta-locked Amy, okay? So Nika is not happy. So he's like, well, fuck you. You're gonna play the Amy, and I'm gonna play Chang'e. So he actually refused to trade with Cherry, and he ended up playing Chang'e solo. Yeah, that's
unbelievable. Descent in the SSG house. Now it's your turn, though. Now you know that that's the precedent set. You get to just lock whatever you want and then just say, I'm not trading it. That's it. You get to play whatever you want. Is it going to keep being the Morrigan? 2 Morrigan games for you in this set. I know that you've been going to that pick a whole lot recently. What has made her so popular? Because you're not the only one that's starting to pick her all the time.
I just think it's one of those girls. If you play perfectly, I think she's the best girl in the game. So she has so many tools. She has a stun. And even when she doesn't have ult, she's like, the 2 is so broken, honestly. It does so much damage. It's on a short cooldown as well. I just think Morrigan is like one of the best gods in the game. So that's why I play her.
Somewhere over in Europe, Zeros is smiling. He preached that to me all last year. He is the #1 Morrigan stan. Dardes, thanks, man, for the time. Congratulations on the win. Go back to talking to your parents. I'm sorry to interrupt that. And we'll throw it over to Finch and Gore to close out the day.
Thank you.
Dude, Dardes is out here making all of us look bad in relation to our parents. I don't text him that often, but he's keeping up with them. Also, no way that's how they're deciding who gets to play what god, right? They're just, I'm keeping it, and you gotta stick with what I give you. It's crazy over there at the SSG household right now. As we take a look back at the games that we had here today, Radiance and Sanguine ends up being a 2-0 for Sanguine as Radiance's struggles continue, Gore. They're still struggling to find a way to chain together some wins. Meanwhile, SSG get the win over Obey, not surprising in the end result, but Obey being that competitive, I think might have been a bit of a surprise. It's still 14-3, a deadlock up at the top, but in the middle of the pack, Gore, here between Sanguine, PK, and Radiance, it's a dead heat.
Yeah, I really, really like to see what these three teams are going to be able to do, just because of the fact that, I mean, they're pretty close to each other. 2 wins separating the top and the bottom, or I guess the third and the fifth is the better way to word it.
Right.
But it really is looking at Radiance and their bounce back tomorrow, playing the Knights. Gonna be honest, that depends, I think, more on the Knights than it does on Radiance. What Knights we see, I think, can really dictate how that one goes. I think they favor them. And so you're looking at them, unfortunately, right now, like, how do they do against Renegades? How do they do against, like, Obey, United? Those have to be guaranteed wins for them. They have to start punching up. Since they weren't able to hit Sanguine, they really hope that tomorrow they look great against the Knights, because otherwise, they really do look like they're going to be staying right around there towards the bottom half of the standings.
We've seen it before, though. Being in first all year doesn't guarantee you a win at the end, so anything could happen. It's getting closer and closer every single week here in the SPL. What that all means is that you can't afford to miss a single day. Make sure you're back here with us tomorrow watching the SPL. Thanks, Gore, for being with me all day. Thank you, production, for making the show happen. And then, of course, thank you all out there for watching us. Going to do it here for us today. Remember, go out there and vote. Make a difference.
All right, everybody, we're getting to the end of 2020, thank God, and that means we are almost at election time. Now more than ever, it's important for everyone to get out, exercise their right to vote, make an impact on your local community and at the countrywide scale. So make sure November 3rd or earlier, if able, you get out and vote.
Go vote.
Go vote.
Canadian, by the way, but understanding that elections are important and obviously you still need to vote. We literally just say the word vote.
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 Go vote.
Yeah, I'm gonna say vote also.
Go vote.
What are you still doing here? Go vote.
Hey guys, make sure you go out and vote.
Hey guys, remember to go vote.
And remember to vote.
Vote.
Go vote or I'll kick your ass.
Hey guys, remember to go vote.
Well, I know at times your vote can seem elusive, but it is indeed your right to vote. Make sure that you're paying attention. Get out there and vote.
What the f*** does everyone want with me, man? Jesus Christ.